Even before the Kamikazes were completed, Japan began its next class of destroyer. Originally, 11 were planned, but with the signing of the Washington Treaty and financial and industrial limitations kicking in, this number was cut back to 9. These were the 1,300-ton Kamikaze class. These were continuations of the previous destroyers, raised forecastle and all, continuing to show a consistent progression of development. The only real difference was that the bridge received more armor, just as in the contemporary light cruisers. This raised their metacentric height, which they compensated for by widening the hull, which slightly lowered their maximum speed. Other than that, they were virtual repeats of the last 3 Kamikazes, with the same rearranged layout of the number 3 gun. Again, pay attention to their starting and completion dates, and you'll see how Japan's shipbuilding industry was starting to hit walls. Oddly, originally, these ships weren't given names. Instead, they were given numbers. Odd numbers. Odd numbers for first-class destroyers, even numbers for second-class destroyers. Eventually, though, this proved such a clerical headache and frustration to esprit de corps that on August 1st, 1928, they were all given names. By the start of the war, they were clearly obsolete, so were relegated to mostly convoy escort and other secondary roles, mostly in home waters and the East China Sea. Kamikaze, originally Destroyer 1, was started December 15, 1921, and was completed December 19, 1922. Asakaze, originally Destroyer 3, was started February 2, 1922, and was completed June 16, 1923. Harukaze, originally Destroyer 5, was started May 16, 1922, and was completed May 31, 1923. Matsukaze, originally Destroyer 7, was started December 12, 1922, and was completed April 5, 1924. Hadakaze, originally Destroyer 9, was started July 3, 1923, and was completed August 30, 1924. Oiti, originally Destroyer 11, was started March 3, 1923, and was completed October 30, 1925. Hayate, originally Destroyer 13, was started November 11, 1911, and was completed November 21, 1925. Asanagi, originally Destroyer 15, was started March 5, 1923, and was completed December 29, 1925. Unagi, originally Destroyer 17, was started September 17, 1923, and was completed May 24, 1925. Main armament was again 4 single open-mount 120mm 45 caliber guns, 1 at the bow, 1 between the funnels, 2 at the stern. Torpedo armament was again 3 twin 533mm torpedo tubes, 1 at the main deck level between the forward gun and the bridge, and 2 at the main deck level between the rear funnel and the aft guns. 20 mines and minesweeping gear were carried at the stern. Propulsion was again provided by 4 boilers, 2 in 2 rooms, venting to 2 funnels. These provided steam to 2 turbines, each running a propeller, that produced 38,500 horsepower for a top speed of 37 knots. Again, they had 1 rudder. Modifications were along the same lines as other ships of their age. In 1939, all were fitted with sonar and traded their mine-laying and sweeping equipment for 18 depth charges. In 1942, they traded their rear gun and a bank of torpedoes for more fuel, raising their weight to 1,525 tons and reducing their speed to 35 knots. In 1944, depth charge stowage was increased to 48. Hayate was blew up December 11, 1941 while supporting the first invasion of Wake. Apparently, a coastal shell detonated her rear torpedo bank. Oiti was sunk February 17, 1944 by carrier aircraft at Truk. Asanagi was sunk May 22, 1944 near Chichijima by the submarine Pollock. Matsukaze was sunk June 6, 1944, also near Chichijima by the submarine Swordfish. Asakaze was sunk August 23, 1944, near Luzon by the submarine Haru. Unagi was sunk August 25, 1944, also near Luzon, by the submarine Pakuta. Hadakaze was sunk January 1, 1945, at Takeo by carrier aircraft. Harukaze, having already been damaged off Luzon by the submarine Sailfish, was again damaged at Mako by carrier aircraft January 21, 1945. Towed back to Japan, she was a constructive total loss and post-war was sunk as a breakwater off Kyoto. Kamikaze survived the war, having rescued survivors of both Haguru and Ashigara when they were sunk. Only lightly damaged, she was surrendered at Singapore. In June of 1946, she grounded and was written off. Well, that went pretty quick. So, before this gets hard, let's look at Japanese anti-submarine stuff. Well, Japan introduced a few types of respectable shipborne sonars during the war, mostly copies of German gear. By far, the most common was the pre-war Type 93. Entering service in the mid-30s, the Type 93 was based on an early 30s British design, which the Japanese had borrowed. Like most sonars, it used a dome lowered from the keel, which handled both the active, pinging, and passive, listening sides, operating like a rotating searchlight. On the active side, it could ping at 2, 4, or 8-second intervals at 2 kilowatts. On the passive side, it had a gain of about 120 decibels. Due to the average fleet speed being about 12 knots, and the purely passive side being almost deaf to normal noise at that speed, ships with the Type 93 often use their active sonar for 15 minutes of every hour. On the active side, it was good to about 0.8 of a mile at 12 knots, 1.5 miles at 8 knots, and 3.25 miles at 4 knots. Remember though, most US subs could do 8 knots submerged, admittedly not for long. The most common type of depth charge was the Type 95, which entered service in 1940. With a weight of 160 kilograms, it had a 100 kilogram warhead. Sinking rate was 1.9 meters per second. Early versions could be set to explode at either 30 or 60 meters, while later versions added a 90 meter setting. In summary, as with most Japanese equipment, I can sum up the US's post-war analysis as, meh, where's the German stuff?